So that's my pre-breakfast ritual. I do that every morning at the moment. I have the apple cider vinegar with the turmeric. It's not the most tasty of drinks, but very, very wholesome. Turmeric's great, anti-inflammatory, excellent for a whole host of ailments. I just think it's a really good preventative measure that you can take to kind of keep inflammation down, a teaspoon a day. Apple cider vinegar and the kcal is for acid reflux, which seems to be quite a common problem actually for the number of messages and comments I've seen on my acid reflux video. When you're bulking, you're consuming a lot of food, and unfortunately it comes at a price sometimes. So yeah, that's what I do before my breakfast meal. I'm now going to have some porridge and bananas. I'm quite flexible with what I eat in the morning. Quite often it's a leftover meal from the dinner the night before, but today it's porridge and it's going to be a lot of it. The reason for that is I like to start my day off with a good amount of carbohydrates and kind of leave a little bit more room for protein and fats as the day progresses. Otherwise I tend to be chasing my tail, especially if you're aiming for over 300 carbs. You don't want to be left with a situation where you're just trying to eat carbs kind of before bed. It just gets a bit of a pain in the arse really. So I like to start the day off with a good 60 to 100 grams of carbs ideally, and that puts me in good stead for the rest of the day where I can kind of eat more balanced. Second meal of the day, lunchtime. Usually it's my biggest meal, and usually it's after my training session. I tend to train about midday, early afternoon, and then come home and have a really big lunch. I would say the bulk of my calories would be in that meal. My appetite tends to be a little bit better after training, and I don't like to feel too sluggish and lethargic before my training sessions or as I'm training. So I don't want to eat too much other than breakfast before the training session. No training session today, only a little bit of arm work in the morning. I'll do a video on that perhaps a little bit later. Doing arms every day at the moment, as my elbow is much better than it was before, so I'm able to do more bicep work. I always try and have at least one meal that's really healthy, loads of veg. It tends to be Thai, so generally speaking it's going to be quite healthy anyway. Chicken thigh, vegetables, some garlic and onions, and some sweet chili sauce with peanuts. Really nice. Some chicken broth soup as well. But probably not the highest calorie meal, so I'm going to be chasing my tail now for the rest of the day, trying to catch up on the calories. So I'm going to have a little bit of chocolate tart now, and then two higher, kind of denser calorie meals later today. These are pretty nice. 2 muffins, 100 grams of chicken breast, cooked in garam masala in the oven. Then we'll take them out, mix them with a little bit of mayonnaise, a little bit of curry powder, serve it in the muffins with coriander, lime juice and lettuce. Really, really dense in carbs and protein, without too much fat. Obviously the fat depends upon the mayonnaise you use, the type of mayo, and how much of it. For me at the moment it's really no big deal, so it's just regular mayo. I'm just trying to get the calories up. So yeah, this will be probably my second to last meal. Starting to feel quite full up now. The grind continues. I tend not to try to have too much gluten. Typically it will be rice, potato, for the most part. Pasta, maybe like gluten-free pasta. But you know, it's really hard to eliminate gluten completely when you're striving for 400 grams of carbs per day. So I'll do what I can, but again, I really try not to stress about it and lose much sleep over it where possible. Some nice turmeric tea there to help this last meal down. That's the Twinings, it's not powder, so a little less ghastly tasting. So I've got a terrine here, it's homemade, picked this up from my dad yesterday. It's got chicken in it, it's got bacon, pistachios, liver, stuffing, really, really wholesome, contains lots of different types of meat, and is therefore very, very good nutritionally. I think a lot of people get caught up in only consuming, 1 or 2 types of protein. You have to remember that every different type of meat and every different type of cut of that meat will have a purpose and have a slightly different nutritional profile. It can all be used by the body. So just because someone's eating maybe chicken and veg on a regular basis doesn't particularly mean they're healthy, because they might be missing out on a lot of nutrients from other foodstuffs. So you should be consuming white meat, red meat, brown meat, skin, lean meat, fattier meat, gristlier meat, sinewy meat, from all different types of cuts, bone marrow. It's all got a purpose, and it all helps to create this more balanced nutritional profile. There's really no excuse when you're bulking not to do that. When you're cutting, it gets a little bit more difficult. You can't really consume that kind of fat that you would on a bulk. My fat today has probably gone up over 120 grams, which is probably a little bit higher than what I'd like it to be, but it's not a big deal. It's very hard to consistently eat that 400 plus grams of carbs without really consuming too much gluten, and not let that fat creep up. And for me at the moment, it's no big deal. I really don't concern myself over that. So I've got a banana here for carbs. I'm gonna finish this up now and start again tomorrow. So just before I finish the video, I'm gonna show you the statistics of the day, the calories, the macros of each meal, the overall ratio across the day, via the Excel spreadsheet, just to give you a better understanding of actually what I've eaten and what my goals are. Okay, so just to finish, I thought I'd run over the numbers quickly, break it down for you. Over 4 meals, total was 3,340 calories. That's with no shakes, no protein powders. Carbs, 353, fat 138, and protein 154. So it's not quite typical for me at the moment, I guess. There's always a bit of fluctuation during bulking phases, and I'm not too worried. It's predominantly the carbs I'm looking for. As long as that protein's kind of over 150, it's okay. But usually the carbs would be around about 350 to 400. Fats would predominantly be 105 to 120 maybe. Protein perhaps a little bit higher, usually 160 to 170. So the bulk of the carbohydrates come in on the first 2 meals, breakfast and then post-training. This is generally when my appetite is the highest. Makes sense to get the most amount of food in. And you can see here, the second meal of the day post-training is massively higher in terms of calories than the other meals, and it takes a big drop off thereafter as I become kind of more full. I don't really fancy as much, so I like to start the day off with a nice high amount of calories
and then kind of taper off thereafter. So how's this going to change as I move towards the end of the bulk and transition into maintenance and then a cut? So the carbohydrates will more consistently move up to 400. The fats will drop to around about that 100 mark, and the protein will be more consistently up past 165 to 180. And those changes alone will elicit a decent physiological response in terms of weight loss. And then from thereafter, we'll see what happens and how I kind of respond to those calories, and then we'll just keep dropping. But really, for me, it's all about the ratio of carbs to fats, and keeping the carbs up as high as possible, whilst gradually chipping away at the fat level, keeping the protein kind of moderate and consistent. So Huel supplements would really help out, just make that a little bit easier to get a little bit more carbs, a little bit more protein without too much fat coming in. That makes a big difference. So yeah, that's the video, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, then please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to see more. Stay strong.